First Contact's Price. Ambassador Thela Voss stood before the High Council of Aether, her luminescent tendrils dimmed with concern. The massive crystal chamber, usually a place of serene contemplation, now hummed with tension. Projected in the center of the room was a holographic image of Earth, a planet wrapped in storms and environmental chaos. "We have monitored them for 3 centuries. Thela's voice resonated through the chamber. "They are young, violent at times, but they possess something remarkable. An indomitable will to survive, to protect their home." High Elder Nixus, his ancient form barely visible within his shimmer cloak, moved forward. "Your passion for these humans is noted, Ambassador Voss, but our laws are absolute. Non-intervention in developing civilizations has preserved peace for 50,000 years." The hologram shifted, showing scenes of human resilience. Communities banding together during disasters, scientists working tirelessly to combat climate change, and children planting trees in devastated areas. "They have perhaps 30 years before their atmosphere becomes uninhabitable," Thela pressed. "All their determination, their art, their dreams, lost forever. They brought this upon themselves." Council member Zira stated, her crystalline form refracting light across the chamber. "Their industrial age. And we had our own ages of mistake," Thela interrupted, earning gasps from the assembly. Such directness was rarely displayed in Aetherian society. "We nearly destroyed ourselves before we found harmony. The difference is, we had time to learn. They don't." The chamber fell silent as Archive Keeper Rin activated another hologram. This one showing human achievements. Their music, their literature, their unwavering spirit in the face of adversity. "Consider," Rin's ancient voice echoed, "what the galaxy loses if they perish." High Elder Nixus raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador Voss, you propose breaking our most sacred law. The consequences." "I propose evolution," Thela responded. "Our laws exist to protect developing civilizations. How is letting them die protection?" Suddenly, the chamber's sensors flared. On Earth, another environmental catastrophe was unfolding. A massive hurricane system threatening multiple coastal cities. But instead of fleeing, humans were moving toward the danger. Their primitive vessels pushed through towering waves to rescue strangers. Their aircraft flew into storm clouds to evacuate the vulnerable. "Look at them," Thela whispered. "They risk everything to save each other. Not just family, not just friends. Anyone in need. How many of us would do the same?" The council watched as a human rescue worker, barely more than a juvenile, dove into churning waters to save a trapped elder. The action defied logic, defied self-preservation. And yet, it stirred something in the watching Aetherians. "If we help them," Council member Zira asked, "what guarantee do we have they won't eventually bring their violence to the stars?" Thela's tendrils brightened with conviction. "None. They are imperfect, as we all are. But I have studied them for a century. Their capacity for violence is matched only by their capacity for love, for sacrifice, for growth. They don't just dream of a better future, they fight for it, even when the odds seem impossible." The chamber erupted in debate, but High Elder Nixus raised his hand again. "Ambassador Voss, if we do this, if we break 50,000 years of tradition, you will bear responsibility for whatever follows. Are you prepared for that burden?" Thela straightened, her form glowing with purpose. "I am. Because if we let them die when we could have helped, we break something far more sacred than tradition. We break faith with the very peace we claim to uphold." The council deliberated for 3 days. Meanwhile, on Earth, the storms grew worse. Cities drowned. Millions became refugees. Yet still, humans fought back against their dying world with everything they had. Finally, the council reached their decision. High Elder Nixus approached Thela, his ancient eyes holding hers. "In 50,000 years, we have never interfered with a developing civilization. We have watched many rise and fall, telling ourselves it was the natural order. But perhaps Perhaps it is time for the natural order to change. Thila's tendrils brightened with hope. Go to them, Nixus commanded. Offer our help. But remember, you aren't just responsible for their survival now. You're responsible for whatever they become. As Thila prepared for humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, she watched one final scene from Earth, a small human child, standing in the ruins of a flooded city, planting a tree. It's for tomorrow, the child said in their simple language when asked why. Tomorrow. Humans always believed in tomorrow, even when today seemed hopeless. Perhaps that's what the galaxy needed most right now, not just the Etherians' wisdom, but humanity's undying hope. Thela gave the signal, and her ship began its descent toward Earth. Whatever happened next would change not just one world, but two civilizations forever. The age of isolation was over. The age of connection was about to begin. The seeds of trust. Director Raina Patel hadn't slept in 3 days, standing in the United Earth Response Center, surrounded by holograms that still felt like magic. She watched as Etherian technology systematically cleansed another toxic zone in the Indian Ocean. Their ships, beautiful crystalline structures that defied Earth's physics, danced through the sky like aurora borealis made solid. The atmospheric purification of Sector 7 is complete, announced Thila Voss, her luminescent form casting gentle patterns across the command center's walls. Your marine eco, like it's being controlled, Raina finished. She'd seen enough in her years of crisis management to trust her instincts. But who would have the power to control something like this? The answer would come sooner than anyone expected, and with it, the realization that Earth's environmental crisis might not have been entirely natural. As data poured in from sensors worldwide, a pattern emerged, one that suggested an intelligence behind the chaos. Director Patel, Thila said quietly, her form dimming with concern. I believe it's time I told you the real reason the Council agreed to help humanity. There's something out there in the darkness between stars, something that has been watching your world for a very long time. And I fear they finally decided to make their move. Raina looked at the screens showing her healing world, at the humans and Etherians working side by side, at the storm that defied nature itself, and understood. Their greatest challenges weren't behind them. They were just beginning. Tell me everything, she said. And as Thila began to explain about the Nexus swarm and their ancient hunger for worlds in transition, both human and Etherian knew that the alliance born of environmental crisis would soon be tested in ways neither species had imagined. The seeds of trust planted in these months of cooperation would need to grow into something stronger, a shield against the darkness that was coming. Warriors among peacekeepers, Admiral Marcus Jackson stood at the bridge of the UES Defender, humanity's first starship built with Etherian technology, staring at the tactical display with growing concern. The Nexus swarm's attack pattern was unlike anything in Earth's military history, a haunting mix of biological and mechanical precision that seemed to defy conventional strategy. They're not just attacking, he muttered, watching as another peaceful Etherian colony fell silent. They're consuming. Beside him, Thila Voss's luminescent form pulsed with distress. The swarm doesn't just want territory or resources. They want to absorb all life into their collective. Every world they take makes them stronger, adds to their biological and technological diversity. The Emergency Council chamber aboard the Defender held an unprecedented gathering. Human military leaders alongside representatives from a dozen peaceful species who had never imagined they would need to fight. The contrast was stark, the battle-hardened humans in their uniforms, and the elegant, peaceful species who had known only diplomacy for millennia. With respect, Ambassador Voss, Commander Diana Raves, stepped forward, her cybernetic eye scanning the tactical displays. How did advanced civilizations like yours never develop any military technology? We believed we had evolved beyond the need, replied Lyrian, a representative of the crystalline Novari. Their faceted forms sparkled with embarrassment. We thought peace was the natural end state of all intelligent life. Peace is a garden, Admiral Jackson said, surprising everyone with the metaphor. And every garden needs defenders against the wolves. Humanity learned that lesson through blood and fire. Now we'll teach you. The next few hours transformed the Defenders Bridge into an unprecedented military academy. Humans, who had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare, now taught peace-loving species how to fight. But it wasn't just about weapons and tactics. It was about the philosophy of justified defense. The key, Diana explained to the assembled aliens, isn't just about having weapons. It's about knowing when to use them, and more importantly, when not to. Humanity's greatest military leaders were often those who found ways to win without fighting. As they talked, the tactical display updated with new swarm movements. Their pattern was becoming clear. They were systematically targeting worlds with the least defensive capability, absorbing their unique biological and technological attributes before moving on. They're learning, adapting, Marcus observed. Each world they take makes them harder to stop. We need to act now. Thiela's form brightened suddenly. That's why the Council chose to help Earth. We saw in your history something we had forgotten. The nobility of the Guardian. You fight not for conquest, but for protection. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very qualities that had made other species wary of humans, their military history, their readiness to fight, now made them the galaxy's best hope for survival. A young lieutenant rushed onto the bridge. Admiral, we're detecting a massive swarm fleet heading toward the Aetherian nursery worlds. The nursery worlds, where new Aetherians came into being, where their youngest spent their first centuries learning and growing. The swarm couldn't have chosen a more devastating target. Marcus looked at Thiela, saw the terror in her luminescent patterns. Then he looked at the tactical display, already running calculations in his head. The Defender was the fastest ship in Earth's new fleet, but even at maximum speed. We'll never reach them in time, Lyrian said, their crystalline form dimming with despair. Maybe we don't have to. Diana stepped forward, her cybernetic eye glowing as she interfaced with the ship's systems. The swarm adapts to every species they consume, right? That means they're used to fighting peaceful, technologically advanced civilizations. But humanity. We fight dirty, Marcus finished, a grim smile forming. We've spent thousands of years thinking up ways to win against superior forces. Commander Reyes, show them Plan Thermopylae. The next hours were a crash course in humanity's unique approach to warfare. The peaceful species watched, alternately horrified and fascinated, as humans taught them about guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, and the art of making an enemy's strength their weakness. Your technology is far beyond ours, Marcus explained, but sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. The swarm expects advanced energy weapons and sophisticated shields. They won't expect tungsten rods dropped from orbit, or electromagnetic pulses, or good old-fashioned kinetic impacts. As the plan took shape, Thiela watched the humans work with a new understanding. Their history of warfare, which had once seemed like a tragic flaw, was revealing itself as a precious gift to the galaxy. They understood something that the peaceful species had forgotten. That true peace isn't merely the absence of conflict, but the willingness to stand and fight when necessary. Admiral, she said softly, when we first came to Earth, we thought we were saving you. But perhaps you're saving us all. Marcus checked his tactical display one final time. The combined fleet, Earth's warships alongside hastily armed civilian vessels from a dozen peaceful species, was as ready as it would ever be. All ships, battle formations, he commanded. Let's show the swarm what happens when they threaten children, any children, under humanity's protection. As the fleet jumped to light speed, Thiela realized that humanity wasn't just teaching them how to fight. They were teaching them something far more important, what was worth fighting for. The battle for tomorrow. The void above the Aetherian nursery worlds erupted in a display that would be remembered for millennia to come. The swarm's biomechanical ships, vast and horrifying, emerged from hyperspace expecting easy prey. Instead, they found humanity's first gift to their peaceful allies, the art of the ambush. All units, execute plan Thermopylae. Admiral Jackson's voice carried across the combined fleet's channels. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Commander Diana Reyes, coordinating from the tactical center of the UES Defender, watched as human ingenuity merged with alien technology in ways the swarm couldn't have predicted. Peaceful species who had never known war were now implementing strategies drawn from humanity's long history of conflict. The first wave began with something so primitive the swarm's advanced sensors didn't even register it as a threat. Clouds of metallic dust, scattered by Novari ships, whose crystalline structures had been modified to serve as delivery systems. The dust, a mixture of earth metals and Aetherian minerals, drifted harmlessly through space until it reached the swarm's biomechanical vessels. Now, Diana commanded. The human fleet released a coordinated burst of electromagnetic pulses. The metallic dust ignited, creating a web of conducting particles that carried the EMPs directly into the swarm's neural networks. Ships that had evolved to resist energy weapons found themselves vulnerable to one of humanity's oldest discoveries, the simple power of electricity. First blood to the primitives, Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. Begin Phase 2. The swarm, reeling from the unexpected attack, tried to adapt. Their ships began generating shields designed to repel the metallic cloud. That's when the kinetic strikes began. Massive tungsten rods, accelerated by Aetherian gravity technology, impacting with the force of nuclear weapons, but leaving no radiation to harm the nursery worlds below. On the surface of the primary nursery world, Thela Voss stood in the crystalline sanctuary where young Aetherians took form. Around her, thousands of luminescent beings, barely more than sparks of consciousness, pulsed with fear at the battle raging above. "Be brave, little ones," she whispered, her own form glowing with protective determination. "For the first time in our history, we have guardians who know how to fight." The battle raged across 3 dimensions of space, a dance of violence and protection that would reshape galactic civilization. Human warships, smaller but more maneuverable, darted between the massive swarm vessels, targeting weak points that centuries of fighting only peaceful species had left undefended. The Aetherian and Novari ships, guided by human tactical advisors, used their advanced technology in ways its inventors had never imagined. But the swarm was learning, adapting. Each destroyed ship added its biological and technological distinctiveness to the collective. They began to anticipate human strategies, to counter tactics drawn from Earth's military history. "They're evolving too fast," Diana reported, her cybernetic eye streaming data across the tactical displays. "The Thermopylae gambit won't work much longer." Marcus watched as the swarm's counterattacks grew more effective. They were learning not just human tactics, but human unpredictability. The Admiral knew they needed something the swarm couldn't adapt to. Something that wasn't about technology or tactics at all. "All ships, new coordinates," he commanded. "We're implementing Operation Lighthouse." Diana's eye widened as she saw the coordinates. "Admiral, that's inside the nursery world's atmosphere. If we miss by even a fraction—" "We won't miss," Marcus stated with quiet certainty, "because we're not going to do this alone." The plan was audacious, perhaps insane. The combined fleet would draw the swarm into the upper atmosphere of the nursery world, where the young Aetherians' natural energy fields could be used to create a massive, coordinated pulse of consciousness. It would require perfect timing, absolute trust between species that had been strangers months ago, and a willingness to risk everything on one decisive moment. "Your people will have to lower their shields completely," Marcus told Thela through the comm. "Every ounce of power has to go into the pulse." Thela looked at the young ones around her, their lights dimming with fear, then brightening with determination. "We trust you, Admiral. We trust humanity." The swarm, sensing victory, pursued the seemingly retreating fleet into the atmosphere. Their massive ships descended like dark clouds, biomechanical tendrils reaching out to claim their prize. That's when Operation Lighthouse began. Thousands of young Aetherians, guided by their elders, released their combined consciousness into the atmosphere. Human ships, their hulls modified with crystalline technology, acted as amplifiers. The Novari vessels, their very structures resonating with the pulse, became focusing lenses. The result was beyond anything the tactical simulations had predicted. The combined consciousness of an entire generation of Aetherians, amplified by human technology, and Novari crystals, created a pulse of pure thought that ripped through the swarm's collective consciousness. Ships that had evolved to resist any physical attack found themselves torn apart from within as the unified will of thousands of children, powered by the most fundamental force in the universe, the desire to protect, shattered their neural networks. The swarm, for the first time in its long history of conquest, knew fear. As the massive ships began to fall from the sky, their collective consciousness in chaos, the human fleet launched their final attack. Not with weapons, but with a message broadcast on all frequencies. You believed we would be easy prey because we protect the peaceful. You thought our dedication to defending others was weakness. Now you understand. It is our greatest strength. Leave this space. Leave these worlds. Or next time, we won't stop at defense. The remaining swarm vessels, their collective consciousness fractured but surviving, retreated into hyperspace. Above the nursery world, human ships flew in formation with their alien allies, warriors and peacekeepers united in victory. In the sanctuary below, Thela watched as the young Aetherians' lights pulsed with joy and wonder. They had done more than survive. They had learned something precious from their human protectors. Sometimes the greatest peace comes not from avoiding conflict, but from being strong enough to face it, and wise enough to know when it's necessary. You believed we would be easy prey because we protect the peaceful. You thought our dedication to defending others was weakness. Now you understand. It is our greatest strength. Leave this space. Leave these worlds, or next time, we won't stop at defense. The remaining swarm vessels, their collective consciousness fractured but surviving, retreated into hyperspace. Above the nursery world, human ships flew in formation with their alien allies, warriors and peacekeepers united in victory. In the sanctuary below, Thela watched as the young Aetherians' lights pulsed with joy and wonder. They had done more than survive. They had learned something precious from their human protectors. Sometimes the greatest peace comes not from avoiding conflict, but from being strong enough to face it and wise enough to know when it's necessary. Legacy of Two Worlds. 10 years after the Battle of the Nursery Worlds, the great crystal spires of New Alexandria rose from Earth's restored Mediterranean coast. The structure, a seamless blend of human and Aetherian architecture, housed the newly established Galactic Defense Academy, a testament to how much both civilizations had changed each other. Admiral Marcus Jackson, now significantly grayer but standing just as tall, watched from the Academy's observation deck as ships from across the galaxy arrived for the graduation ceremony. Each vessel represented a story of transformation. Peaceful species who had learned the art of protection without losing their commitment to peace. Still watching the stars, old friend. Thela Voss materialized beside him, her luminescent form now bearing the distinctive golden patterns of a High Council member. Hard to believe how much has changed, Marcus replied, noting a group of young Novari crystal ships practicing formation flying alongside human vessels. A decade ago, most of these species had never even conceived of defensive training. And my people had forgotten the nobility of standing guard, Thela added. We thought we had evolved beyond the need for protectors. You taught us that true evolution means maintaining the wisdom to defend what matters. Below them, in the Academy's main courtyard, Commander Diana Rice was conducting a final review of this year's graduating class. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with beings of light, crystal, and forms that defied easy description. Each cadet wore a uniform that combined their species' traditional garb with practical defensive elements, a visual representation of how far they'd come. Professor Lyrian's latest research just came in, Diana called out as she joined them on the observation deck, her cybernetic eye now a more sophisticated model that reflected the ongoing synthesis of human and alien technology. The swarm has maintained its distance, but they're evolving again. Not for attack this time. They're developing diplomatic interfaces. Marcus raised an eyebrow. They want to talk. Perhaps they learned something from their defeat, Thela suggested. That strength doesn't always mean conquest. That different species can be stronger together than apart. The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. The ceremony was about to begin. As they made their way to the Grand Assembly Hall, they passed walls lined with artifacts from both Earth's history and the peaceful species' long existence. Ancient human weapons stood beside Aetherian peace treaties, Novari meditation crystals next to tactical displays. The assembly hall itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Its dome, crafted from living crystal, reflected the emotional state of all present, creating a constantly shifting aurora of shared consciousness. Today, it pulsed with pride, hope, and something else, a quiet determination that had become the hallmark of this new galactic society. Admiral Jackson took the podium, facing the assembled graduates and dignitaries from across known space. 10 years ago, he began, his voice carrying naturally through the crystalline acoustics. Two very different civilizations faced a choice. Humanity stood on the brink of environmental collapse. The peaceful species faced an enemy they weren't prepared to fight. We could have failed separately. Instead, we chose to succeed together. He gestured to the graduating class. Look around you. Every being in this room represents a bridge between worlds. You who are naturally peaceful have learned the art of defense. You who are naturally warlike have learned the wisdom of restraint. Together, you embody the greatest strength any civilization can possess, the ability to change without losing yourselves. The ceremony continued with the presentation of commissions. Each graduate would serve as both defender and diplomat, trained to fight if necessary but dedicated to maintaining peace. They were the first generation of a new kind of guardian, combining humanity's protective instincts with the peaceful species' wisdom. As the celebrations wound down, Marcus found himself back at the observation deck, watching Earth's sunset paint the sky in colors that seemed more vibrant since the planet's restoration. A group of young Aetherians flew past, their forms leaving trails of light as they practiced maneuvers with human pilots. They're calling it the Guardian philosophy, Diana said, joining him at the window. The idea that true peace requires both the wisdom to avoid unnecessary conflict and the strength to face necessary ones. It's being taught in schools across the galaxy now. Not bad for a species that almost destroyed themselves, Thela added with a gentle pulse of amusement. We had good teachers, Marcus smiled. You taught us that strength without wisdom is just another form of weakness. We taught you that wisdom without strength can't protect what matters most. Together we create something entirely new, Thela finished. A civilization that knows both the price of war and the value of peace. As night fell over New Alexandria, ships from 100 worlds lit up the sky with a coordinated display of lights and energy. A celebration of how far they'd come and a promise of how far they could still go. The great experiment had worked. Humanity had found its place in the cosmos not as conquerors or as subjects, but as guardians. The peaceful species had rediscovered the nobility of protection without losing their commitment to harmony. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, even the swarm was learning a new way of thinking about strength and survival. The legacy of two worlds, one born in struggle, one born in peace, had changed the galaxy forever. The age of the Guardian had begun.